Kunja Bihare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribharadhare Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribharadhare Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribharadhare Gopi Jana Vallabha Giribharadhare Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachare Yamunatira Vanachare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihare Jai Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada Jai Jai Prabhupada Prabhupada Prabhupada, Prabhupada. Jai Jai Prabhupada, 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 Prabhupada. Jai Vishnupad, Paramahansa, Parivrajacharyas, Tadis Srimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada ki, ISKCON Samstapakacharya, Srila Prabhupada ki, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki, Shri Shri Radha Radhanath ki, Shri Giri Govardhan ki, Shri Caitanya Mahaprabhu ki, Sankirtan Yagya ki, Gopremanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Chapter 21, Instructions by Maharaj Prithu, Text 30. Dohitradin Rite Mrityo Shochyan Dharma Vimohitan Varga Swarga Pavarganam Prayenaikatmya Hetuna Dohitradin Rite Mrityo Shochan Dharma Vimohitan Varga Swarga Pavarganam Prayenaikatmya Hetuna Dohitradin Rite Mrityo Shochan Dharma Vimohitan Varga Swarga Pavarganam Prayenaikatmya Hetuna Dohitradin Rite Mrityo Shochan Dharma Vimohitan Varga Swarga Pavarganam Prayenaikatmya Hetuna Mama vimohitan. Vargasvarga pavarganam. Praenai katnya hetuna. Dohitra adin. Grandsons like my father. Vena. Rite. Except. Mrityo. Of personified death. Shochyan. Abominable. Dharma vimohitan. Bewildered on the path of religion. Varga. Religion. Economic development. Sense gratification. And liberation. Swarga. Elevation to the heavenly planets. Apavarganam. Being freed from material contamination. Prayena. Almost always. Eka. One. Atmya. The Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hetuna. On account of. Translation. Although abominable persons like my father, Vena, the grandson of death personified, are bewildered on the path of religion, all the great personalities like those mentioned agree that in this world the only bestower of the benedictions of religion, economic development, sense gratification, liberation, or elevation to the heavenly planets is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. King Vena, the father of Prithu Maharaj. King Vena, the father of Prithu Maharaj, was condemned by the Brahmins and saintly persons because of his denying the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and rejecting the method of satisfying him by performance of Vedic sacrifice. In other words, he was an atheist who did not believe in the existence of God and who consequently stopped all Vedic ritualistic ceremonies in his kingdom. Prithu Maharaj considered King Vena's character abominable because Vena was foolish regarding the execution of religious performances. Atheists are of the opinion that there is no need to accept the authority of the Supreme Personality of Godhead to be successful in religion, economic development, sense gratification, or liberation. According to them, dharma, or religious principles, are meant to establish an imaginary God, to encourage one to become moral, honest, and just, so that the social orders may be maintained in peace and tranquility. Furthermore, they say that actually there's no need to accept God for this purpose, for if one follows the principles of morality and honesty, that is sufficient. Similarly, if one makes nice plans and works very hard for economic development, automatically the result of economic development will come. Similarly, sense gratification also does not depend on the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for if one earns enough money by any process, one will have sufficient opportunity for sense gratification. Insofar as liberation is concerned, They say that there's no need to talk of liberation because after death everything is finished. Prithu Maharaj, however, did not accept the authority of such atheists headed by his father, who was the grandson of death personified. Generally, a daughter inherits the qualities of her father, and a son gets the qualities of his mother. Thus, Mrityu's daughter, Sunita, got all the qualities of her father, and Vena inherited the qualities of his mother. A person who is always subjected to the rules and regulations of repeated birth and death cannot accommodate anything beyond materialistic ideas. Since King Vena was such a man, he did not believe in the existence of God. Modern civilization agrees with the principles of King Vena, but factually, if we scrutinizingly study all the conditions of religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, we must accept the principles of the authority of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. According to Vedic literature, religion consists only of the codes of law given by God. If one does not accept the authority of the Supreme Godhead in matters of religion and morality, one must explain why two persons of the same moral standard achieve different results. It is generally found that even if two men have the same moral standards of ethics, honesty, and morality, their positions are still not the same. Similarly, in economic development, it is seen that if two men work very hard day and night, still the results are not the same. One person may enjoy great opulence without even working, whereas another person, although working very hard, does not even get 2 sufficient meals a day. Similarly, in the matter of sense gratification, sometimes one who has sufficient food is still not happy in his family affairs or for sense gratification. Is still not happy in his family affairs, or sometimes is not even married. Whereas another person, even though not economically well off, has the greatest opportunity for sense gratification. Even an animal like a hog or a dog may have greater opportunities for sense gratification than a human being. Aside from liberation, even if we consider only the preliminary necessities of life, dharma, artha, and kama, religion, economic development, and sense gratification, we will see that they're not the same for everyone. Therefore, it must be accepted that there is someone who determines the different standards. In conclusion, not only for liberation must one depend on the Lord, but even for ordinary necessities in this material world. Prithu Maharaj therefore indicated that in spite of having rich parents, children are sometimes not happy. Similarly, in spite of valuable medicine administered by a competent physician, sometimes a patient dies, or in spite of having a big safe boat, sometimes a man drowns. We may thus struggle to counteract impediments offered by material nature, but our attempts cannot be successful unless we are favored by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Dohitradin rite mrityo shochan dharma vimohitan vargaswarga pavarga nam prayanai katnya hetuna. Translation again. Although abominable persons like my father, Vena, the grandson of death personified, are bewildered on the path of religion. All the great personalities like those mentioned agree that in this world, the only bestower of the benedictions of religion, economic development, sense gratification, liberation, or elevation to the heavenly planets is the supreme personality of Godhead. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pascha Deshatarane Vanchkalpaturubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Yes, so Dhruva Maharaj is continuing his explanations about life within this material world, that it is really, you could say it is wise, it is intelligent to accept the existence of the Supreme Lord. It is not simply a matter of belief, not just a matter of belief, because what is belief? There's no real substance unless it's proved. Like here we are sitting and we know that today is today. Today is Tuesday, January the 7th. And it's not just a matter of belief. At least it's accepted. It's accepted by, you could say, authoritative people. So one way or the other, though, it's accepted, and it's not just a matter of belief. That I'll believe that it's Tuesday, but you'll believe that it's Thursday, and we can believe what we like, and that'll be good enough for us. But particularly in terms of, you could say, fundamental, foundational realities of existence, it just makes sense to accept that there is a supreme personality of Godhead under whom everything is going on. Just literally everything is going on. And it's not really just a matter of belief to accept that, but there is evidence. Prabhupada, Shri Radha Radhanath Shri Giri Govardhan Shri Caitanya Mahaprabhu Ki Jai. Prabhupada gives some evidence to support this later in the purport, in the second part of the purport. Prabhupada gives a few examples. One example is that two people may have even identical standards, if that's possible, of religion or morality. But then we find that their positions may not be the same in life. Someone may become well known for being very moral and pious like that. Someone may just be in complete obscurity. Then Prabhupada gives the example of economic development. Two people may work hard day and night, as much as each other. But one of them may become wealthy, and the other one may he may even be extremely poor. Just the fact that you work very hard as another person doesn't mean that you're going to become as successful or as affluent as the other person. And Prabhupada gives other examples here, that in the matter of sense gratification, sometimes a person who has sufficient food is still not happy in his family life, or may not even have a family life. Whereas another person, although not economically well off, may have, well, Prabhupada says, the greatest opportunity for sense gratification, but he may have just a wonderful family situation possibly, and all sorts of facilities like that. So how is it working? It's not just working on the basis of how hard you try, but because people may try equally and get different results, but it depends ultimately on the control of the Supreme Lord. So this is the main point which is being emphasized here, that we, for example, we may struggle to counteract the problems of material life, the impediments offered by material nature, but our attempts will not be successful, they cannot be, unless we achieve the favor of the Supreme Lord. So this is following on from the previous verse which we read on, what was it? Friday, I think, yeah. It was 2 verses, 28 and 29. And the point that was made there is that a very authoritative people accept, well, first of all, that there is information in Vedic literature about life. But then there's also great people who accept those things and who act in terms of those things. And yes, they all accept the existence of the Supreme Lord. So here the example is being given, well, Prithu Maharaj is giving the example of his father, who was not a great person, but, well, Prithu Maharaj describes him as being abominable, and you can't really get much worse than being abominable. The Sanskrit term is shochyan. Abominable means just like extremely bad, just like absolutely horrifically bad. Yes, so people like him, and not necessarily as extreme as him, but people you could say who are sort of in their ways following in his footsteps. Then what's their situation? They're bewildered on the path of religion. You could say religion, well, religion is part of the picture at least, but they're bewildered in so many ways. They're bewildered on the path of religion, they're just bewildered on the path of life. What to do, what not to do, how to be successful, and what is worthwhile, what is dangerous to do, things like this. So these people have a sort of fundamental quality or characteristic under which they're all situated, and that is they're atheists. That's the basic point. They may be atheists in different ways and materialistic in different ways, but the basic factor which is there and which is like the foundational factor in the cases of all of them is that they are atheists. Whereas, in the previous 2 verses we read on Friday, a list of great devotees and great personalities was given, and at least one of the characteristics which they all shared in their own ways was that they accepted the versions of the Vedic literature, and on that basis they all accepted the existence of the Supreme Lord, not just as some sort of distant entity, but someone who's really an essential part of their lives, and under whose supervision and shelter they're actually conducting their lives. So there you see the two characters, two types of characters, the atheists or the demons and the devotees. And they share, each group shares certain things, or particularly certain things which identify them for what they are. And even though they may, in terms of certain details, but otherwise the fundamental, foundational characteristic they share is one. So in the case of the great devotees mentioned, as we said the other day, they accept the Vedic literature, and on the basis of Vedic literature, they accept the existence of the Supreme Lord. So they live under his shelter, and they live lives of service to him. So the atheists, like Vena, who was exceptional, yes, they have that defining characteristic of being atheistic. And Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport, in the 5th canto of chapter 18, verse 8, chapter 18, verse 8, there Prabhupada talks about, well, it's actually Prahlad Maharaj who's speaking. And Prahlad Maharaj's father, of course, was Hiranyakashipu, and he was even, maybe, he was no better, he was even worse, really, than Vena, the father of Dhruva Maharaj. And Srila Prabhupada talks about the people in general in material life. Let me just quickly look that up. What happened? Anyway. Excuse me. Let me just look up what Prabhupada exactly says, but in effect what Prabhupada said, that these people who are materialists, they're following in the footsteps of the original materialist, you could say, who is Hiranyakashipu, and who was like just very extreme in his materialism. So others may not be as extreme in their materialism. They may not be as violent. They may not cheat as much as he did. Yeah, Prabhupada says here in the purport of the 5th canto, chapter 18, verse 8, that Hiranya means gold and Kashipu means a soft cushion or bed. Materialistic persons always desire to make the body comfortable, and for this they require huge amounts of gold. Thus, Hiranyakashipu was the perfect representative of materialistic life. In other words, he's sort of like the founder acharya, you could say, of just the basic principles of materialistic, atheistic life. Yes, so the people in general, in their small ways, none of them are on the level of Hiranyakashipu. Hiranyakashipu was so powerful that he made the seasons, the working of the seasons change. It was a constant summer. Yeah, that was how powerful he was, affecting the functionings of the universe. Yes, I had some, not friends, but people who I knew a bit, and they didn't work, but they were surfers. You're familiar with surfing, no doubt. Surfing, and they didn't work, they would just travel, and in the southern summer, like now, they'd be down here somewhere, here or Australia or wherever, and in the northern summer, they'd be up there. So they called it the endless summer. But Hiranyakashipu, he didn't have to do that. He just had control of the universe, and he just made it like that. That the people who are controlling these things, and normally they control in certain ways, but he would not let them do like that. He would force them, in this case, to make it summer constantly where he was. So Vena was certainly like a staunch follower of Hiranyakashipu, in principle at least. Who knows if he'd heard of Hiranyakashipu or not, maybe not. But in terms of how he lived and how he thought, he was following in the footsteps of Hiranyakashipu. And he made it illegal and punishable by death to believe in God. That's pretty powerful, isn't it? He made it illegal to believe in God, and if anyone did, they would be executed. That's Vena. And Vena, of course, the descriptions have been there, but when he was a child, he would play children's games, cops and robbers, and all that sort of thing. And those games where you make a gun with your fingers. Did you do that when you were young? You did? So did I. You did also? Make a gun. Yes, and bang, bang, you're dead. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. But what he would do with his little friends, he's a child. He's just a child. He's not even a teenager, just a little child. He wouldn't just go bang, bang, you're dead. He would actually kill the children he was playing with. That's extreme, isn't it? Little bit. Sure. And he would do things like that. It was just like really bizarre and just extremely extreme. So he had that nature. Partly he had a nature which was born in him. His mother was the daughter of death. There is a person who is death. His name is Mrityu, which just means death. So there's a person who is death personified and sort of dispensing death to everyone sooner or later. So he had a daughter whose name was Sumitra. Sumitra, something like that. And Sunita. So she picked up the qualities of her father as the daughter, but then Vena was the son of Sunita, and he picked up the qualities from his mother, because these qualities, it's a very interesting subject, actually. It's something well worth thinking about. But the Vedic standard, which Prabhupada mentions here, is that generally the son picks up the qualities of the mother and the daughter picks up the qualities of the father. Just in a general sense, doesn't mean that the son picks up the qualities of the mother and becomes like effeminate or something along those lines, and the daughter picks up the qualities of the father and becomes very masculine and that sort of idea. But in a broad sense, in a general sense, in terms of qualities, that's how it works, according to Vedic literature. And I don't know, you can look at yourself and see. Sort of examine yourself. Yeah. In my case, when I heard that and I thought about it, I realized, yeah, it's true. At least there is truth in it, in that my mother she was like a non-stop reader. And she was a non-stop doer of crossword puzzles, which I didn't pick up from her, but boy, was she ever. I told her she should enter competitions and she would make money. So I picked up the reading habit from her. I picked it up, and not from my father. He was not like that. My father was a businessman. Anyway, this is an interesting point. So therefore Vena, who's the father of Dhruva, who's a great devotee, Vena, the father, was the grandson of death personified. Yeah. Via the mother who was the daughter, his mother who was the daughter of death personified. So all these types of people as a category, as a group, when it comes to understanding what is life, and particularly anything to do with a religious perspective on life, they're just not interested or even like strongly opposed. Some of them become philosophical atheists and they try and argue God out of existence. Yeah. Like I think Prabhupada made the point, or was told by someone, that in the underground railway system in New York, there was a bit of graffiti which said, "God is dead," signed Nietzsche. Because Nietzsche was living not so long ago, actually. Some time ago, but he wasn't like 100 years ago or anything. So then after a while, Nietzsche died. And you've all heard this, I'm sure. Then someone wrote next to that, "God is dead," signed Nietzsche. Someone wrote, "Nietzsche is dead," signed God. Yeah. So, these people, they try to argue God out of existence. And Prabhupada makes the interesting point that they have that desire. in their hearts there's like a foundational desire. They're anti-God. They don't like the idea. That they're opposed to the idea so strongly that they want to make like a mission of establishing the idea that there's no God. So they become atheistic philosophers, and they write books. Like Nietzsche, apparently, I never read any of his books, but Nietzsche apparently is the person who came up with this little sutra, God is dead. And, he argued it in different ways. So Prabhupada makes the point, very interesting point, that Krishna in Bhagavad Gita 15:15 says that from me comes knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So actually Krishna gives such a person the intelligence and the knowledge to make some even sophisticated philosophy, which at least that person who creates the philosophy thinks proves that God doesn't exist. He comes up with that philosophy by the mercy of God. So just see how broad-minded the Supreme Personality of Godhead is. Yes, so there's a group like that, and they have certain sort of shared characteristics which are common. Of course, there are different varieties, but there's certain, within the different varieties, there are some things they share. So this point is made in Bhagavad Gita. Where is it? Oops, wrong chapter, sorry. Chapter 9, verse 12. Well, let me read verse 11 first. Avajananti mam mudha manishim tanam asritam parambhavam ajananto mama bhuta maheshvaram. Fools deride me when I descend in the human form. They do not know my transcendental nature as the Supreme Lord of all that be. Then the next verse, 12, says, Mogasha mogakaramano mogajnana vichetasa rakshasim asurim chaiva prakritim mohinim shrita. Those who are thus bewildered are attracted by demonic and atheistic views. In that deluded condition, their hopes for liberation, their fruitive activities, and their culture of knowledge are all defeated. So this is like a general shared characteristic shared amongst all the different groups generally, that they become attracted to demoniac, atheistic things. Demoniac means like grossly materialistic, just grossly materialistic. The terms are rakshasim, asurim. Rakshasa means demoniac, and asura, asurim, means anti-God, atheistic views. They just become attracted. Therefore, for example, you generally find the people in general are, to different degrees in the sort of atheistic line, to different degrees. Even some of them who supposedly believe in God, but there's so many things, attitudes and things they do in their lives which show that God does not really figure much in their lives, if at all. But for example, we see in this world, in terms of food, that the non-devotees of different types, different types of non-devotees, of atheists, they are attracted, for example, to eating meat. It's a universal attraction amongst them, at least the great majority. Yeah, and that, of course, is a demoniac type of attraction, type of interest. They're attracted to illicit sex life, probably every single last one of them, attracted to illicit sex life as if it's just so important and so wonderful. And it's a demoniac type of attraction and intoxication. So many are attracted to intoxication. It's just maybe not universal, but it's something like that. And they're attracted to it. And if you present opposing ideas to any of these things, then they don't appreciate it usually. And they may argue against it and like that. So yes, and in that bewildered condition, then generally whatever they try to do is not really successful unless one considers becoming very rich and getting lots of meat to eat and loads of women or members of the opposite sex under one's control. If you consider that to be successful, they're successful. But in terms of real standards of success in life, they got serious problems. And therefore that verse in Bhagavad Gita says their hopes for liberation, even like advancement, real advancement materially, etc., they have no such hopes. Live out this one life, and then they're shipped off to places which are more suitable for them. So yes, this is the unfortunate situation of these people, that like I said, there are different categories. In Europe, actually I forget exactly when it was, but a few hundred years ago, the Catholic Church was struggling, and the Protestant movement started directly opposing the Catholics, and then there were people who eventually didn't like either. So they became humanists. Humanism is a specific type of philosophy that you don't need. God is irrelevant. There's no God anyway. So just be a good human. Yeah, just be nice. And so that's humanism, which arose because of the frustrations with Catholicism and Protestantism. Haribol, such is life in this material world. Yeah. But the basis of it all is that they don't accept the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. They think either he's just, like a convenient fiction to make people feel that, I must be good rather than be bad, although he doesn't exist. But he's just a convenient fiction like that. Or if he exists, then maybe he's just there just to provide facilities, just to facilitate our enjoyment in this material world. So anyway, Prabhupada concludes the purport. Prabhupada says, in spite of valuable medicine administered by a competent physician, Sometimes a patient dies, or in spite of having a big safe boat, sometimes a man drowns. We may thus struggle to counteract impediments offered by material nature, but our attempts cannot be successful unless we're favored by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Any comments, questions?
It's so clear how, people don't think of them as demoniac qualities, but when we realize the modes of nature, then we feel like we're being degraded. But if they totally surrender to those, they don't notice the difference, but they know they're miserable. Intoxicated people don't look happy.
Sure.
But if that's all they know.
That's all they know. It's the only recipe they know for produce the, happiness. But it's the wrong recipe. It's a recipe which naturally produces suffering and difficulty.
And quite often the churches don't talk about the dangers of intoxication. I think particularly Catholic churches, many of the priests have drinking problems. None of it's good, but the person that has one drink compared to the one that has a huge amount, how are they going to guide people? How does that work? We find out with devotees when they're not in the right state, they can't guide anyone, can they? But in their institution it's accepted, in ours it isn't.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Comments, questions? Whoops. Where did he come from? Anyway, yes?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for your wonderful class. I just came up with a sort of a sutra myself, getting inspiration from your class, that God is not there to fill one material's enjoyment, but to fulfill one's deep spiritual needs and bring him closer to himself, to God actually.
Yes.
So in many religions across the world, they take God as a personality to fulfill their material enjoyment.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that shouldn't be the case.
Right, exactly. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.